The United States stands alone, utilizing electrifying executions with over 4,300 shocking acts of the electric chair. Once considered a novel and humane method, it now sparks debate on its cruelty after a century of use. Is it still a jolting punishment? Witnessing a man's sudden death from electrical shock in 1881 in Buffalo, New York, a local dentist, Alfred Southwick, envisioned electrocution as a humane alternative to hanging. Through tests on animals and lobbying efforts, he designed an eerie device resembling a dentist's chair and proposed electrocution as a painless and swift form of capital punishment. A commission chaired by human rights advocate Elbridge Gerry and including New York lawyer and politician Matthew Hale and Alfred Southwick was set up by Governor David Hill in 1886 to investigate more humane means of execution. After eliminating options, they chose electrocution as the most humane method, with decapitation by guillotine as a close contender. At the time, lethal injection was unknown. A commission based their decision on expert testimony from electrical scientists, reasoning that electricity travels faster than nerve impulses. They believed that electrocution would destroy the victim's brain and nervous system before any pain signals could reach the brain, making it painless. They proposed centralizing executions in three prisons, Auburn, Clinton, and Sing Sing, and passed a bill that was signed into law on June 4th, 1888, to go into effect on January 1st, 1889. Thus, electrocution became the recommended method for capital punishment with Southwick's invention at its core. The commissioners, however, acknowledged that too little was known about the mechanism by which electricity killed, and they noted that even people struck by lightning frequently didn't die, and that man made lightning might not be a reliable killer either. The bill itself lacked specific details about the type and amount of electricity to be used for executions. The New York Medico-Legal Society, consisting of doctors and lawyers, was assigned the task of determining these factors. In September 1888, a committee recommended 3,000 volts, but they hadn't decided between direct current or alternating current. The committee's leader, neurologist Frederick Peterson, sought the assistance of Harold Brown, an electrical engineer and opponent of alternating current in this regard. Building a machine for executing people proved to be a daunting task. The practicalities posed numerous questions. How should the charge level be determined? How long should the charge last? Should multiple electric charges be administered? And if so, how many? The development of the electric chair became entangled in the war of currents, a fierce battle between electricity giants Thomas Edison, who championed the direct current power system as the safest electricity, and George Westinghouse advocating for the alternating current system. The rivalry was fueled by the desire for widespread electricity access and immense profits. Both sides resorted to false claims and propaganda to undermine each other's system's safety. Westinghouse, wary of association with the death penalty, refused to sell his AC generators to prisons. However, Edison's teams scoured the region for any available aftermarket Westinghouse generators, undeterred by Westinghouse's objections. Brown played a role in acquiring the Westinghouse AC generators needed for the chair, with support from Edison and the Thomson Houston Electric Company. In the quest to bring the electric chair to life, unexpected alliances were formed. Seeking advice for design challenges, Southwick turned to Edison, who surprisingly directed him to Westinghouse instead. Edison secretly financed the project of Brown, favoring the use of alternating current. Edison's true intention was to associate Westinghouse's alternating current with death, hoping to elevate his own direct current's reputation. Through Brown's involvement in a commission investigating humane execution methods, Edison proposed alternating current as the means of execution. In July 1888, Brown conducted a series of cruel and gruesome experiments on animals at Columbia College in New York. His first experimental subject was a 76-pound Newfoundland dog in a metal cage. The dog had been muzzled and had electrodes attached to one foreleg and one hind leg. Brown connected the dog to the direct current generator that Edison had loaned him and, starting with 300 volts, gradually increased the voltage to 1000 volts. As the voltage increased, the observers noted the dog's yelping increased, but it remained alive. Having proven the safety of direct current, Brown disconnected the suffering animal from the direct current generator and connected it to the alternating current generator with the remark, "We shall make him feel better." Brown turned the voltage to 330 and the dog collapsed and died instantly. The viewers were impressed. But Brown wasn't done yet and brought in another dog. He said he was going to connect this one to the alternating current generator first. This, he said, would prove that the animal didn't die because the shocks from the direct current generator had weakened it. Before he could accomplish this, however, an agent from the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals arrived and asked Brown to stop the experiment and spare the poor dog's life. The second dog would die another day. Despite public outrage and criticisms of the experiment's validity, Brown persisted in his cruel demonstrations by electrocuting stray dogs of different sizes with both alternating and direct current at varying voltage levels in Edison's laboratory. In private experiments, Brown and his assistant, Arthur Kenley, attached electrodes to dozens of stray dogs and tried various combination of volts and amperes before announcing that it took only 300 volts of alternating current to kill a dog, but 1000 volts of direct current. He killed more dogs with alternating current and allowed doctors to dissect the animals afterward to support his claims about the dangers of alternating current. However, many argued that the experiments were both cruel and inconclusive. The dogs had been weakened and battered, and it was impossible to determine the exact contribution of each current type to their deaths. Additionally, dogs were not necessarily representative of how humans would react to electric shocks. In response to the criticisms, Brown conducted another demonstration in December 1888 this time using larger animals and focusing solely on alternating current. He electrocuted a 124-pound calf, causing its demise with 770 volts. The team's test on a lame adult horse further bolstered Edison's confidence in the discovery of a painless procedure for executing inmates. Based on those results, the Medico Legal Society recommended using 1000 to 1500 volts of alternating current for executions. Eventually, Edison's team would electrocute a total of 44 dogs, 6 calves, and 2 horses in their attempt to discredit alternating current. The design of the electric chair was handled by a surgeon, George Fell, who drew up the chair as a simple oak construction with a retractable footrest, restraints, and mounted electrodes. Fell went against the Medico Legal Society's recommendations, changing the position of the electrodes from foot and head to the head and the lower back. The construction of the electric chair was carried out by Edwin Davis, the first state electrician for New York. Westinghouse objected to the unethical use of generators his company manufactured in the electric chair's design and detested Edison for his underhanded tactics. Determined to halt executions by electricity, Westinghouse fought against the adoption of alternating current. In the long run, though, Westinghouse's direct current emerged victorious, proving to be the more efficient method for executions. With efficiency and chilling calmness, the electric chair made its debut at New York's Auburn Prison. On August 6, 1890, William Kemmler, a produce merchant convicted of a gruesome hatchet murder, became the first to face this electrifying execution. Rising early, Kemmler prepared himself, donning a neat suit, white shirt, and tie. After breakfast and prayers, his head was shaved. At 6:38 a.m., he entered the execution chamber, addressing the witnesses with composure. Gentlemen, I wish you all good luck. I believe I'm going to a good place, and I am ready to go. Strapped into the chair previously tested on a horse, Kemmler calmly advised the executioner, Edwin Davis, the state electrician, to proceed carefully. Take it easy and do it properly. I'm in no hurry. In a horrifying turn of events, the electric chair's debut execution took a grisly and macabre path. Initially charged with 1000 volts for 17 seconds, it was believed to be more than enough to end William Kemmler's life. His body convulsed violently and he lost consciousness. However, to everyone's shock, when his body was removed from the chair, he seemed to gasp for breath. Reacting swiftly, Kemmler was subjected to a second shock of 2000 volts for several minutes. It was during this prolonged jolt that his skin began to bleed, his body visibly burned, and sparks flew from his face. Disturbingly, the room was filled with nauseating smell of singed flesh and the unmistakable odor of boiling human excrement. The scene was so horrific that many attendees had to hastily flee the room, unable to bear the ghastly sight and putrid scent. The New York Times reported that the stench was unbearable. George Westinghouse himself, upon learning of the execution, grimly remarked that they would have been better off using an axe, considering Kemmler's status as an axe murderer. The execution of Kemmler turned into a horrifying spectacle illustrating Murphy's Law in full force. Despite Edison's assurance of a guaranteed 1000 volts for a surefire death, the initial charge malfunctioned, delivering only 700 volts for 17 seconds. Nevertheless, the shock rendered Kemmler unconscious, leading the crowd to mistakenly believe it was a success. Celebrations erupted, with Southwick proclaiming, "We live in a higher civilization from this day on." However, the joy quickly turned to horror when someone shouted, "Great God, he's alive!" And the attending medic agreed. The path of the current between the electrodes may have bypassed the heart, the primary target organ for electric execution. To compensate, the voltage was increased and the duration of the second shock was extended, inadvertently intensifying the heat output and causing Kemmler's body to burn. Kemmler's execution became a nightmarish example of a series of unfortunate events. During Kemmler's electrocution, the doctors downplayed the gruesome nature, claiming the muscle contractions weren't signs of pain and that he died instantly. However, their understanding of electricity's effects was limited. Criticism arose when they reshocked Kemmler, contradicting their earlier claim. They were condemned for overseeing an electrical execution without scientific understanding. Edison criticized their ignorance, advocating for the use of hands instead of targeting the brain through the skull. The doctors defended the head electrode, emphasizing its role in rendering the brain insensible to pain. A clash between the doctors and Edison ensued, highlighting differing perspectives on executing prisoners via electrocution. Despite the disastrous execution of Kemmler, prison officials insisted it was a success, attributing the issues to being the first attempt. However, the debate over head versus hand electrode placement persisted, prompting further investigation. Dr. Carlos McDonnell took charge of an electrocution and designed a special electric chair to test Edison's hand to hand idea. Charles McElwain, a 19-year-old murderer, became the first victim of this new chair. As he was immersed in salt water filled jars, one hand holding a crucifix, the switch was flipped. McElwain's body convulsed violently, but remarkably, he still had a pulse after the initial shock. McDonnell swiftly ordered the attachment of skull and leg electrodes, delivering a second fatal jolt. The data recorded showed that hand to hand electrodes generated a lower current and voltage compared to the skull and leg electrodes. This contradicted Edison's belief that the skull's resistance hindered current flow. In a statement aimed at Edison, McDonnell remarked that the inventor reasoned correctly as an electrician, but wrongly as a physician. Henceforth, all future criminal electrocutions in the United States would use skull cap and leg electrodes based on the evidence from this experiment. Over the following decades, the electric chair became a routine method of execution in the United States, administered by state electrocutioners. These electrocutioners were chosen solely for their expertise with electricity, lacking medical knowledge. Robert Elliott, New York State's electrocutioner, executed 387 prisoners. Elliott's autobiography, written on his deathbed, surprised readers with its message advocating for the abolition of the death penalty. While refining the electrocution procedure, Elliott focused on amperage and observed variations based on the body's electrical resistance. He reported the high heat generated during electrocutions and believed that victims felt no pain due to the rapid onset of unconsciousness. However, there was limited scientific research into the electrophysiology of electrocutions during his tenure. Elliot made modifications based on his own intuition, such as slowly lowering the current to weaken the heart and prevent continued beating after the shock. Despite his belief in the efficiency and quickness of electrocution, Elliot argued for improving its killing effectiveness by placing an electrode over the heart. Ultimately, Elliot concluded that capital punishment should be abolished, viewing it as ineffective and merely serving societal revenge. He suggested making witnessing an electrocution a civic duty to evoke a stronger sense of responsibility and potentially lead to the abolishment of the death penalty. The electric chair's development relied on empirical modifications and lacked scientific understanding, with historical data primarily derived from Eliot's records. Despite technological advancements, present day electrocution procedures remain largely unchanged. The lack of progress and continued use of the electric chair would likely disappoint and appall Eliot, who carried out the executions but ultimately believed in the abolition of capital punishment.